Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin's back up around 119K because it looks like Uptober showed up early. As Tether just yeeted $1 billion into Bitcoin like it's confetti at a yacht party, JPMorgan says Bitcoin is undervalued versus gold, which is banker speak for number go higher if adoption keeps climbing. Oh, and those altcoin ETF approvals, odds are pegged at basically yes, which is how squeezes get born. All that and more right now on today's show. Let's go. Good morning, my Ledger legends, and welcome back to another episode of the Blockchain Report. I'm Hank Hudson, broadcasting live from San Francisco, California, where the fog has better brand recognition than most altcoins. It is Thursday, the day your daily espresso keeps you upright while the charts try to fold you in half. Now, before we dive headfirst in today's kiddie pool of 100x leverage, mystery tokens, and CEOs discovering transparency after their lawyers do, let's practice some therapeutic violence for a second, shall we? And smack that like button like it just called you mama ugly. And hit and follow RoxomTV and me at Hank at RoxomTV, because if you're still taking alpha from a guy filming option strategies in a rented Lambo, I can't legally stop you, but I can pray for your liquidity. All right, let's take a peek at this morning's market rundown and see who's mooning, who's melting, and who's emailing the SEC per my last message. Let's go. All right, so this morning, happy tidings in Bitcoin land. We were up to 119 mere minutes ago. We're back down to the mid 118s, but still, things are looking pretty good for Bitcoin. Uptober is clearly in full swing, and we've got some charts I want to talk about that will demonstrate exactly what I mean. So let's bring those charts up here, guys. Now remember, everybody, this is not financial advice. This is my read of the tea leaves and, of course, the blockchain. So again, quick price check. Right now, Bitcoin is currently sitting at $118,650. We're up almost 5K from yesterday. And yeah, that was the sound of shorts learning cardio across the world after that big bump up. So this first chart we're seeing is the supply distribution heat map, essentially where people bought, right? On screen, you'll see a white line that represents the Bitcoin price, and then a stack of horizontal color bands right behind it. The red orange means lots of coins were bought at this area or at this price here. The yellow black means not many coins were bought. And that arrow marks where we are currently today. So here's the punchline here. We had a thick, hot red supply cluster between that 113 to 118K mark. Price plowed through it, and from here to 121K, there's still some supply, but it's noticeably thinner than what we had previously cleared. Or in plain English, the scary wall ahead turned into a speed bump, and it might even flip into support if the bulls keep on pressing. All right, let's move to chart 2. This next chart we're looking at is the realized profit versus loss chart. So who actually took profits? This one's actually pretty simple, okay? The white line is the price. The green spikes are the realized profits when coins move on chain. Red spikes are realized losses. Now, I circled a few of the big ones here so your eyes don't have to do the squats this morning. At the last two local tops, profit taking was massive. On March 13th of last year, we saw about $3.5 billion worth of realized profit. On November 22nd of last year, we had nearly $4 billion worth of realized profit. Yesterday, even after a 5K pop and sitting 4% below all-time highs, realized profit was much calmer, about $1.5 billion. So what does this all mean? Well, pretty much a lot of traders are waiting for higher prices before hitting the sell button. Less cashing out near highs often means there's still room upstairs, so things are looking pretty good. Let's go to chart number 3 here. Now, this third chart we're taking a look at here is kind of the short-term holder thermometer. These are the SPH MBRV Bollinger Bands, okay? So let's see what the short-term holders are up to. right now up top, that white line again we see is the price, okay? And down below it, that brown waveform we see there is the STH-MBRV oscillator. It compares price to the short-term holder's average cost. So essentially coins that moved in the last 155 days or less. The green line at the bottom equals the oversold zone. The red line up top equals where things get overheated. The dashed bands you can see on the chart there are the Bollinger Bands around this metric. Tighter bands equal a calmer, coiled market. And I've marked past dips into oversold territory with those yellow circles you can see at the bottom. Right now, we tagged oversold, bounced, and we're climbing toward neutral while the bands are pretty tight as of now. That says the market reset is after cooling off, right? Now, if demand stays firm, that's the kind of setup that often precedes another push higher. So that's something we want to keep an eye on here. And that brings us to our last chart. That is chart number 4. This is our seasonality chart, and Uptober certainly has some receipts here. So this is a bar chart of the average monthly returns, okay? October comes in around just over 18% on average. Now November, that is the real show off here. You can see by the giant green candlestick we got there, that's at nearly 44% on average gains for the month of November. September clocks in at an average in the negative, about 1.32%, and thankfully September is over, so we don't got to worry about that one anymore. History, though, isn't destiny, but the calendar bias is looking pretty friendly right now. So what's the big picture we're seeing after looking at all of these different charts here, gang? Well, pretty much we're a little over 4% from new all-time highs. Bulls want to keep demand hot and push into a new price discovery mode. Short pullbacks are normal in an uptrend like this, and the line is in the sand is that the short-term holder cost basis is around 112K. As long as we stay above that, the trend is your buddy. But if we dip below that, we do a quick vibe check at that support level. Now, with lighter supply overhead, muted profit taking, a short-term holder reset, and seasonality on our side, this is the recipe that turns almost all-time highs into please update that chart template so things are looking pretty good. Let's see how things are looking in the rest of the cryptoverse right now. So let's get that up on the screen here, guys, and see how things are looking this morning for everybody else in the world. Right now, we'll go in TradFi. We got the Dow Jones sitting comfy right around that mid $46,000 level. S&P 5 comfortable at about 6,700. The NASDAQ composite about 22,800-ish, just about. And last but not least, we got MicroStrategy. They have been taking a beating the last couple of weeks, but Bitcoin's on the ups. Big surprise. So is MicroStrategy. They're currently up almost 2% this morning, sitting right around 344 when being as low as 300 earlier in the week. So they are seeing a nice surge we've seen here. And then last but not least, we have Ethereum currently sitting just beneath that $4,400 level. We saw it sink beneath 4,000 just mere days ago. But as Bitcoin's tide has turned, so has Ethereum, and it's reflected in the price. Last but not least, we got Solana. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for Solana the last few weeks. We saw it all the way up to 250, drop all the way down below 200, but now we're back in that 220 range. So Solana fans out there are feeling the love. We got a lot of news to talk about in today's show, gang, so we're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, this morning's bull run with our top stories will be coming up. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on the Blockchain Report.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
All right, welcome back. It's time to start this morning's bull run where we go over the top stories of the day so that you can do other things with your morning, like sleep. That sounds great. All right, first up, we got Bitcoin, of course, has kicked off Uptober by hopping over 118K like it heard there were free sats on the other side of things. It's looking pretty good. Currently, we're at about 118.5-ish and trading right about there right now. It's about 4.5% gain in the last 24 hours per CoinGecko. Now, that total crypto market cap pushed to roughly just over $4 trillion, which is a lot of zeros for people who said this industry was just a phase. October traditionally has a reputation for treating Bitcoin well, and the data seemingly agrees. CoinGlass shows that October has only delivered negative monthly returns twice since 2013, which is about as rare as a calm day on crypto Twitter. This monthly close over 114K makes September green, and historically, that's been rocket fuel heading into Q4. Now, popular analyst Mikey Bull Crypto points out that green Septembers tend to be followed by Q4 moves that are not shy about the word parabolic, as Q4 is typically Bitcoin's best quarter, with average gains around 77%, which is technically called fun. Markets are also waiting on a different kind of confetti. Decisions on 16 spot altcoin ETF applications, including Solana, XRP, Cardano, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Polkadot, and Hedera. Now, the SEC's new generic listing standards made the old 19B-4 deadline drama basically moot, and Bloomberg has the approval odds at 100%, which is the kind of number that gets desks calling each other. Now, for the cycle nerds out there, your moment has arrived. Joao Wedson over at Alfractal is tracking a magic number. That number is 548, which is the number of days from the halving to the cycle peak. Prior cycles were 371 days back in 2012, 525 in 2016, and 546 in 2020, which suggests a gentle lengthening trend that points to a final burst. We're about 528 days post-halving from April 19th of 2024, which puts a potential peak at day 548 on October 19th. So you got about 2.5 weeks. So with an outside window of this day extending all the way to November 1st. So we got some time. Now, another analyst, Selly46, runs a 152-week model that pegs the top this year around December 23rd of 2025, which isn't exactly the worst gift to find under the Christmas tree. Now, both projections admit that regulation, sentiment, and tech can bend the curve, but the window is measured in weeks, not years. Now, from a price lens, Uptober strengthens plus ETF headlines plus a late cycle countdown is the kind of alignment that squeezes shorts and tests new levels, which Bitcoin tends to celebrate by making new ones to test. So we'll see new all-time highs on the way, I think. And of course, Japanese firm Metaplanet's back in the news because they went shopping, and they are now the proud owners of 5,268 more Bitcoin for the low price of $623 million. That lifts its total stash to over 30,800 BTC, worth about $3.3 billion at an average buy price of $108K per coin. They are now the fourth largest corporate Bitcoin holder on Earth, beating their fiscal year 2025 target of 30,000 Bitcoin ahead of schedule. Let's take a look at the current leaderboard of the corporate Bitcoin treasury holders on my favorite website, bitcointreasuries.net. Let's take a peek and go to camera 3, guys. Okay, so if you haven't seen this before, this is the #1 place on all of the interwebs to see what your favorite Bitcoin holding companies are up to. So right now we got the big board. Of course, at the top dog spot, we got Strategy with their 600,000 something odd coins. But as we mentioned in our story, Metaplanet has been steadily rising through the ranks, and we can see them currently in the #4 spot right beneath Mara Holdings and 21 Capital. So if we were to click on Metaplanet right here, gang, we can get a look at Metaplanet's individual page on bitcointreasuries.net and see how their Bitcoin translates to other parts of their business. So right now we can see they have 30,823 coins. Not too bad. Their average price, as we mentioned, 108K per coin. Right now, their profit loss on that Bitcoin firmly in the positive territory, nearly 10, about 11%. So they're looking pretty good right now at current price levels. And if we scroll down, we can see how these numbers relate to their stock and their financials. So right now, their entire market cap is $5 billion, $6 billion diluted, and their enterprise value is $5 billion. Can we actually go up again, guys, really quick? I thought I had some more information, or did we already skip that? Okay, so so this is all the information we currently have on this page. Let's keep scrolling down. I think they've added some new features to this site. I want to see if we got them here. There's okay, yes, we have some graphs. There's even videos on some of these pages. It's always a work in progress, but this is the best place on the interwebs to see what your favorite corporate Bitcoin treasury companies are up to. Metaplanet's at number 4. So let's get back to camera 1 here, guys. All right, so we saw on the leaderboard, they're still behind Strategy, Mara Holdings, and 21 Capital, but Metaplanet is certainly rising through the ranks. And their CEO, Simon Garovich, has planted a flag at 210,000 BTC by 2027. That would be roughly 1% of the entire supply if you're, keeping score at home. Now, since pivoting to a Bitcoin treasury, they've raised over 500 billion yen. That's about $3.34 billion via moving strike warrants, convertible bonds, and equity offerings. And on the corporate bingo card, Eric Trump joined the advisory board back in March and has been front row at shareholder meetings to bless the Bitcoin-centric playbook. You put all this together and you get a well-funded buyer with a moonshot target and a finite asset in its sights. You can call it what you want, not hype, not headline hunting. I like to call it gravity. All right, next story here, we got Tether. They just celebrated the end of Q3 by doing what Tether does best. And what is that? Well, firing $1 billion into Bitcoin like it's confetti at a yacht party. On September 30th, they scooped up exactly 8,888.889 BTC because, of course, the number has to be meme-worthy. At nearly 113K per coin, that's a cool $1 billion wired straight from Bitfinex hot wallets into Tether's reserve address. It's one of the largest inflows of Bitcoin by a stablecoin issuer this year. Their latest attestation report put Bitcoin reserves around 9 billion. This single move boosted that pile by nearly 11%. Bitcoin is now neck and neck with gold on Tether's balance sheet and creeping toward double-digit dominance. And this isn't exactly new behavior either, right? On-chain history shows that Tether has been stacking billion-dollar chunks of BTC for the past 2 years now, especially when markets get shaky. So when the stablecoin everyone uses to trade Bitcoin keeps buying more Bitcoin to back its own token, that's the definition of a positive feedback loop. It's like printing casino chips, then betting them all on the house favorite. And yes, the house favorite here, of course, is Bitcoin. And JPMorgan, they looked at Bitcoin recently, and then they looked at gold, and basically said, one of you is cheaper than you should be. And it wasn't the shiny rock, right? The bank with $4 trillion in assets says Bitcoin is trading below fair value when you compare it to gold, which, yes, is a bold way to enter the digital gold conversation. Investors have trusted gold for centuries now through inflation, war, and financial crises. Bitcoin showed up in 2009 and immediately got the nickname digital gold because, marketing never sleeps, am I right? JPMorgan's point starts with scale, okay? Gold's market value sits north of $20 trillion. Bitcoin's market cap is currently around $2 trillion. That gap is a canyon, and the bank says scarcity plus adoption is how canyons get bridged. Scarcity is the headliner here. Gold's supply grows slowly. Bitcoin supply is hard capped, as we know, at 21 million coins, which is catnip for anyone allergic to inflation. And if Bitcoin's valuation lined up more closely with gold on those fundamentals, its price would need to rise a lot to catch up. Or in other words, long-term growth potential is very much on the table if adoption keeps compounding. And adoption is not whispering anymore. Hedge funds, pension funds, and asset managers are adding Bitcoin to real portfolios like it belongs at the adult table. Corporates such as MicroStrategy and Tesla have already stapled it to their balance sheets. Some governments, hello El Salvador, made it part of their national strategy. Now, when JPMorgan says undervalued, the institutional crowd doesn't shrug, it schedules a meeting. Now, for the buzzkill portion that comes standard on all research notes here, volatility is still very much a roller coaster with no lap bar, and Bitcoin can gain or lose thousands in just a few days, which is not everyone's idea of, a relaxing Thursday. Regulation is still being argued country by country, and strict rules could slow down growth or dampen demand. JPMorgan doesn't pretend that those risks don't exist. They argue new asset classes always go through uncertainty. Gold was doubted once itself, right? The road ahead is early. It is definitely, though, not over. Traditional finance is no longer ignoring Bitcoin. Banks are analyzing it the same way they analyze everything else that moves billions. And if Bitcoin's valuation inches closer to gold, that signals a real shift in markets and confirms Bitcoin's place in global investment strategies, not just as a curiosity, but as a category. But for now, the question stays open, the debate stays loud, and Wall Street is certainly watching, which, coming from JPMorgan, is another way of saying the conversation isn't going away, and neither is the case for upside. And Jim Cramer, he took to X and he told his followers to buy crypto. That's it. That's the entire headline. And I don't know if it's good or bad yet, because he did it with a photo of the national debt clock, which currently sits at over $37 trillion. 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 Cramer's point to all this, well, the U.S. debt is out of control, and crypto, especially Bitcoin, looks like a safe haven from it. And honestly, we both know that he's not wrong. Bitcoin was designed for this exact problem, right? Governments racking up debt, inflating currencies, and then just pretending that everything is fine. Limited supply, yeah. Decentralized, yeah. No printing press, yeah. But here's the kicker. Cramer also recently whined about froth in the crypto market and said he wanted a pause in the endless rally, as he called it. So it begs the question, which is it, Jim? You buy crypto or please stop buying crypto? The community, as always, had their fun with it. Some mocked Cramer as the ultimate contrarian indicator, buy when he says sell, sell when he says buy. Others pushed back on the idea that Bitcoin is an inflation hedge. And then, of course, Michael Saylor jumped on in, hey buddy, there he is, telling Cramer to focus on Bitcoin and leave froth talk to soda companies. So, yeah, Jim Cramer says buy crypto, but how you choose to use this information is up to you. And Congressman Nick Begich wants to diversify America's balance sheet, and yes, that means Bitcoin next to gold bars. At the BTC and DC conference in Washington, D.C., he said, we've got a heavy emphasis on gold. I think we should have an additional strong emphasis on Bitcoin. He's co-sponsoring the Bitcoin Act, boosting innovation, technology, and competitiveness through optimized investment nationwide. Congress rarely nails an acronym, but boy, they went full on chef's kiss with this one, didn't they? Now, if passed, Bitcoin gets a strategic reserve status, building on President Donald Trump's executive order to maintain permanent Bitcoin holdings like a modern-day digital Fort Knox. The plan targets 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years using what he calls budget-neutral strategies, which is DC speak for we're buying, but the line item won't scream about it. It also expands the Trump order that blocks the feds from dumping seized Bitcoin and other crypto, the stuff parked in that separate stockpile, if you will. Or, in other words, fewer surprise government sell-offs, more coins staying off the market. Strategy co-founder Michael Saylor showed up with Begich and Senator Cynthia Lummis to cheer the idea on because, of course, he did. Begich's pitch was straight to camera. We must lead, not follow, in this digital revolution. The time to act is now. From a Bitcoin perspective, a 5-year government shopping list that says 1 million BTC looks a lot like structural demand. And when supply is capped and the buyer is price insensitive by design, that's the kind of macro bid candles tend to notice. We're taking a quick break, but when we're back, more blockchain report on the way, so stay tuned. We'll be back right after this. All right, guys, we're back, and we're checking out what's going on in the Twitterverse. I'll never call it X. Elon, I don't care. There's no money you could pay me to call it X. So let's see what's going on the Roxom Twitter page. And if you're not already following it, guys, what are you doing with your life? Give RoxomTV a follow. This is the most up-to-date signal you can find in the entire cryptoverse, especially when it comes to Bitcoin. So make sure you give it a like and a follow and a subscribe if you haven't already. All right, so let's see what we got here. So first, I want to bring up this candle chart here. This is something we talked about briefly earlier in the show. So a big narrative that we've been following for the last couple of months is how does Bitcoin do month to month, right? Because as we know, history doesn't repeat, but it certainly does rhyme. So right now, if you take a look, you can see that September, as we've talked about many times, people call it Red September. I don't know if that's after that Game of Thrones, Red Wedding episode or whatever, but September on the whole, not the best. In fact, if you look here, it's the only month that on average, Bitcoin has gone down historically. It's like almost 1.5 percentage points down. But as you can see for the rest of the year, a lot of green grass growing, especially as we enter Q4, which traditionally is where Bitcoin makes most of its hay. So right now you can see we've just entered what is often known as Uptober, where the average Bitcoin gain is around 18% on average. So if you take 18% at right now's current prices, so let's say right now, just for make it easy for math's sake, we're at 120. We're thinking about almost a 20% gain in this month alone from there. So 20% of 120,000 is 24,000, which means we could very well see Bitcoin past 140 by the end of this month if in fact history does rhyme. And then things get even more bullish as we enter the month of November. And that you can see kind of the Samson Mao-esque Omega candle right there, where Bitcoin on average gains around 43%, which is outrageous. So just imagine for a sec, we've had these crazy price predictions or seemingly crazy price predictions thrown out from some of the biggest names in the business, right? By the end of the year, 200K, 400K, what have you. But let's do the maths here for a second. If Bitcoin is 120 right now, and we go up roughly 20% by the end of this month, we all of a sudden are above 140K. And then if November tends to hold true as we've seen in the past, and we could expect potentially another 40% upside from there. So what's 40% of 140K? So math, that's like 56K. So you put 56K on top of that right now, that $200,000 price target starts looking pretty reasonable if we just go by what we've seen from Bitcoin in the past. So things are looking pretty bullish there. And then we get a little cherry on top with the month of December, which is still about a 4 or 5% gain itself, and $200,000 per Bitcoin by the end of the year all of a sudden seems almost very reasonable, right? So there's a lot of excitement going into Q4 of this year. And of course, we're going to see how that plays out. But if we're only 2 days into Uptober, and things are certainly seeming to go in the right direction. So get excited. Let's scroll down here and see what else is going on the Roxom Twitter page currently. We also have some big news coming out that banking giant Citi set a 12-month price target for $181,000 for Bitcoin, right? So that's their price target for the next 12 months, but you see we're inching toward that 200K mark. And why is this such a big deal, right? Well, you get another big bank like Citi coming into the fold and now saying that we see Bitcoin going to these places, right? You've seen it time and time again. We saw it with JPMorgan, right? Jamie Dimon saying, I don't believe in Bitcoin. I'm staying away from it. Just a few months ago, he came out and said, our customers are demanding access to these assets, so JPMorgan is going to acquiesce and provide those for their banking customers in the next year. So what is that telling you, gang? We have the biggest institutions in the world initially said, we don't buy into Bitcoin, we don't believe in it, and all of a sudden they're making 6-digit price predictions and offering services to customers upon which only a few years ago they swore they would never do. We see it time and again, and this is just another example. So if you don't see where the world is heading right now, my friends, get your heads out of the sand and make sure you're tuned into our show every morning. It is happening right before your eyes. The question is, are you paying attention to this, or are you on the TikToks doom scrolling for some other celeb garbage? Let's go, get in the game here, guys. Let's keep scrolling down and see what else is happening. So yeah, we just saw here not long ago, Bitcoin's price over that 119K mark. A week ago, we were down below 110. Things are moving quick. Uptober seems to be very real, and it is happening to us right now, gang. So make sure you are doing your research and setting yourselves up, because I think we are just at the beginning of the peak of this bull run that I could very well see extending into next year. So get the going while the going's still relatively cheap, because it's only going to get pricier from here. Not financial advice, do your own research, but come on guys, we see what's happening. Let's keep scrolling down and see what else is going here on the Roxom feed. Great show with my main man Nolan Bowerly this morning. Always make sure to check him out on The Great Awakening. Guy's a one-of-a-kind talent. Another story, right? We're going to be talking about this in a little bit. JPMorgan, giant in the industry, $4 trillion banking giant, in fact, says that Bitcoin is undervalued compared to gold. I think we chatted about it a little bit. Guys, we're seeing this unfold in real time here right now. Out with the old gold, in with the new digital gold Bitcoin. The banks are seeing it, I'm seeing it. Hopefully you're seeing it too, and hopefully you're doing something about it at home because, get on board or get left in the dust here, gang. Let's scroll down a little bit further here. What else we got today that looks interesting? Canada's leading non-custodial Bitcoin exchange, BitcoinWell, is raising up to $100 million in USD to buy more Bitcoin. Guys, these corporate treasuries, do you think this is just a passing fad for some of the largest and most influential institutions in the world? I think not. All right, look at the tea leaves. Even me, I don't know what's going on, but even I can see how this is playing out, right? Everybody's getting on board. Bitcoin has become too big to ignore, and we are in the midst of the flippening where Bitcoin and gold flip places, but we are just at the beginning of it. So we are still very early, but who knows how much longer early will really be. So it's time to get yourself educated and involved in this space now before you miss out completely. There's a lot of gains left to be made, but it's on you to do your own research. So make sure you're checking that out. Scroll down a little further. What do we got here? We have Donald Trump coming out and saying Fed Chair Jerome Powell is an obstructionist. Well, I was actually getting a little worried. I felt like it had been a couple of days since I had heard Trump come out and call Jerome Powell anything, so I'm glad to know they both still have a pulse. This is all political theater at this point, right? We've seen Trump threatening Jerome Powell now. Hey, we saw it. No, we get out of here, Donald. He's been threatening Jerome for weeks and months now. I don't think anything is going to come of this. He just needs to put up a good fight, or at least show that he's putting up a good fight. Jerome Powell is going to end up finishing out his term in 2026, and they'll select someone new. We know there's a lot of potential people. Chair, was it Quintez, recently was told he will not be in that position, but there are some others that I think we're going to talk about in just a little bit. And then last we got here, BlackRock currently holds 773,000 Bitcoin, all right? So when people tell me, the few people in my ecosystem that tell me that Bitcoin is still a fad, look to this, right? You always look where the big money is going, and BlackRock is the biggest money there is. They're the evil empire of the financial system, and they have more Bitcoin than anyone not named Satoshi, right? So if you want the writing on the wall, you say, what is Larry Fink doing? And Larry Fink, only a couple years ago, also very anti-Bitcoin, is now in charge of the firm that's holding more Bitcoin than anyone in the world not named Satoshi Nakamoto. So that's all you need to know, gang. The writing is very clear. It just matters to whether or not you're paying attention, and hopefully we're bringing that signal to your signal. We have a giveaway. Oh, we got a giveaway. Okay. Let's see what we got here, gang. Ooh, RoxomTV giveaway. Open up your eyes and clean out your ear holes for this one. So we over at RoxomTV are giving away $100 in Bitcoin, and it's incredibly easy to enter this. All right, all you got to do is retweet this post at RoxomTV. Make sure to like RoxomTV and follow. Make sure you're liking this post as well. Join the Bitcoin Alpha community, okay? And there's a link to it where you can join right there. And then make sure you tag a friend, all right? Because what fun is it getting obscenely wealthy off of Bitcoin if you're not doing it with the people you love? So tag a friend, get them in the know too, right? We're all in this journey together, and you don't want to be the only friend in that sad, lonely Lambo. You want all your friends to have Lambos too, so make sure you tag them. We always have great giveaways like this happening at Roxom and RoxomTV, so make sure you're paying attention, because who doesn't love free Bitcoin? It's literally my favorite thing. So take a peek at that. All right, so I think that's enough for checking out the Twitterverse today. We're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, we got more stories, and we're going to be joined by the legend herself, Decentra Suze, in just a bit to break down everything that's going on. So more Blockchain Report coming to you right after this. All right, welcome back. It's time for a little socially awkward, the part of the show that was named after how I experience life. Let's see what everybody's up to. First up, we got YouTube. Looks like they're going to have to cut a $24.5 million check to President Donald Trump to settle his lawsuit over being suspended after the January 6th Capitol attack. The suspension, as you might remember, came right after he left the White House the first time. Now, 4 years later, Alphabet decided it's cheaper to pay than to fight. Of that $24.5 million, 22 of it is earmarked for Trump to funnel into the Trust for the National Mall and, wait for it, the brand new White House ballroom. Because nothing says lesson learned quite like a ballroom add-on. The other $2.5 million goes to side plaintiffs, including Naomi Wolf and the American Conservative Union. This makes Alphabet the third big tech giant to cut a settlement check to Donald Trump. Meta has already paid up $25 million themselves for the Facebook ban. X, formerly Twitter, coughed up $10 million. At the time these lawsuits were filed, legal experts said Trump had basically no chance of winning. Turns out no chance of winning still pays about $60 million if you keep filing enough cases. Meanwhile, Google insists the settlement isn't an admission of liability. They declined to comment on why they did it, but Trump's YouTube account has been restored since 2023. So yeah, Trump is back on YouTube, and now he's building a new ballroom. And Alphabet barely notices. The company is worth nearly $3 trillion today, up $600 billion since Trump returned to the White House. So yeah, the fine for silencing a president turned out to be less than a rounding error in Google's stock chart. For perspective, Alphabet made that $24.5 million back during this very sentence right now. ABC News, by the way, already paid $15 million in December toward Trump's presidential library to settle a George Stephanopoulos defamation suit. Paramount tossed in another $16 million in July for a CBS 60 Minutes editing fiasco. If nothing else, Trump post-presidency strategy is clear. When in doubt, sue, settle, and then add square footage. The disclosure of this YouTube deal came a week before an Oakland court hearing was scheduled with Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers. Case closed, though. Ballroom very much open. All right, so we're talking about social media with Socially Awkward. I want to go to social media right now and see what is actually being discussed right now. So let's bring up X, or Twitter as I will forever know it, and see what is actually going on in the Twitterverse. What are the kids talking about? So Victor, what is the big news that we're seeing right today? What is this one? Elon, what is he doing now?
Looks like Elon Musk is calling for a boycott.
Okay, let's bring that on. I gotta see what is Elon sticking his head into. I know he's the richest man in the world, but we don't care about your opinion on everything, Elon. So let's Elon. Hey, get that out of here. We don't promote violence on this show very often. So Elon Musk urged his 227 million X followers just yesterday to cancel Netflix subscriptions, criticizing the platform for promoting a transgender woke agenda in children's programming like the animated series Dead End Paranormal Park, which features a non-binary character. Conservative influencers amplified the call by sharing clips from various Netflix kids shows and reporting user cancellations, while Netflix shares fell nearly 2.5% that day. Though analysts partly attribute the decline to broader market factors, the campaign highlights ongoing debates over LGBTQ representation in media, with Musk confirming his own subscription cancellation amid reports of harassment toward the show's creator, Hamish Steele. Victor, what do you make of all this? Like, should Elon even be putting his nose into this stuff? Does he have a point? Where do you fall on this one?
I mean, I don't agree with him. Yeah,
You're going to agree or disagree?
No, I don't. So
You don't agree. Okay, so what is it about? Is he just sticking his head into things that
he's
don't
just trying
concern
to
him?
be in the headlines, I guess. Anything that's anti-LGBTQ with him is like Oh, I don't know. He'll just
I don't.
I think it's a personal thing with him and his kid. I think one of his kids is transgender, so anything,
Oh.
yeah, and he obviously doesn't support them. So anything that comes up with that, he'll just try to get in the headlines. And
Wow. Talk about an easy way to have one of your children hate you forever, to literally go against something that, is something that they're experiencing in life. I don't really get what the problem is. Like, people of all kinds exist every day, and giving them
Mhm.
representation in media is fine. Even I think if you disagree, I know it's a hot button topic, but I don't know, man. It does scare me how one guy like that, and it kind of, I guess, similar to Trump, can just affect an entire market just by a couple of
Right.
keystrokes, right? Like that worries me. And how many people are listening to Eli and then jumping on board? Does anyone listen to or Elon and then be like, well, I should think this too? Like, I don't know. Him and Trump are kind of unhinged a little bit in their own unique ways. Where I'm like, are people really? I mean, aside from MAGA, are they really like jumping in with everything he
See,
says? You think?
the thing is, like, I don't think I've met anyone who's like followed suit with Elon. Like, oh, I'm gonna agree with
No.
him. Like with Trump, yeah, even in like media or whatnot, like they agree with him and whatnot. But like whatever Elon says, everyone kind of just takes it as a joke, at least for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah, not a lot of Elon Maxis out there like there are Trump, which is really, I still don't get how Trump does it, how he's been able to garner such favor from his side of the aisle, unlike anything we've ever seen before in political history. He really is, you can say what you want about him, but he is like a one of one in that respect when it comes to, media and politics. So I don't know. I feel like, Elon, this might not be your lane. I guess if you have enough money, anything can be your lane, but come on, man. Those poor LGBTQ kids out there got it hard enough already. Let's give them some people in the media that they can see themselves in, because they're part of the community too,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, I agree with
it's
you.
crazy. I don't
Yeah.
like it. I don't like it.
Hank, our guest is
Stick your nose
waiting,
out.
so let's take a quick break and
Oh,
then come back with them.
okay. All right, we'll be right back with our guest of the day, Decentra Suze, joining us in studio here at the Blockchain Report. We'll be right back with more after this. All right, welcome back. It's time for more of this morning's bull run. And joining us for our bull run this morning, we have our special guest. She's returning to the show. She is a laser-eyed slayer of bad takes, a policy whisperer to Westminster, and a journalist who can turn crypto alphabet soup into plain English. You've read her in the Citi AM and Forbes, and she's steering the ship at Bitcoin Policy UK. Let's give a big Blockchain Report welcome back to one of our favorites, Susie Violet Ward, aka Decentra Suze. Oh, Suze, it's great to have you back. How are you? We've missed you. How are things going on the other side of the pond?
Really great, but not as great as that intro. I think that's probably the best I've ever had. It's incredible.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And you certainly deserve it. Now, Suze, for those few people out there that might have missed you the first time on the show, can you just give us a 30-second update? What's on your beat? What's cooking at Bitcoin Policy UK? And what's on your desk this week? And you can take as much time as you want.
Oh, good grief. So much on my plate. It's ridiculous. I don't know how I have time to do it all, but we've just come back from the Labour Party conference, which was in Liverpool. We were actually really surprised that we managed to get a stand there. We only had a small stand, but it was in the main hall. And considering they've never had any Bitcoin representation there, it really was a big deal. And we've got this umbrella in the background. We went around photo bombing as many stalls and trying to get on as many cameras as we could. Trying to get the Bitcoin message out to everybody. There you can see it on on GB News. I think
Yeah.
I stood there for about 20 minutes until they politely
Oh,
asked
wow.
me to move on. Yeah. So it was on for quite a while. But we were talking to MPs and the mood, it was so positive. I mean, there was a bit of a disconnect between the MPs who were pushing for digital IDs. That's something we can come on to later if you want. And the people that were genuinely curious about Bitcoin. But it really showed me that things have really moved on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, things are certainly moving in a favorable direction, no doubt about it. We're going to get into that in a bit, but I want to get back to that umbrella. So what was the impetus for that umbrella? Did you just have that thing laying around? Did you make that specially for the occasion? Like, tell us about that thing, because I love it. And I'm kind of wondering, why hasn't anybody made Bitcoin branded umbrellas yet? It could rain outside and we see big orange bees everywhere. It seems like a no-brainer.
Especially in the UK. I mean, they would go down a storm, wouldn't they? Excuse the pun.
Right.
But what was the question? Why haven't better umbrellas been made before? Or was there something?
Did you make that umbrella? Like, how did you even get that thing?
No, so one of my on Bitcoin Policy UK, I have a mining and energy advisor called Russell, and he is an absolute creative genius. And he was the one that designed the stand for us at the Labour Party conference. And he bought these parasols because he just thought that they'd be really good and bright for some kind of guerrilla marketing. And so he made them, and they really were. They went down so well, and everybody, when I was walking around the conference, just snaking up and down the stalls with the umbrella, not really doing much, people were giving it a double take, and it definitely got noticed.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, how can you not notice that? I actually have something similar that I received from the Bitcoin Asia conference, but I feel like it might not be culturally appropriate here in the United States so much, but it is fun, and it's like some kind of Mario character with a Bitcoin miner in his lap. I don't know, but it's fun, so I think we need to start branding more Bitcoin themed apparel, just so we can walk around with it and show the people what they want here. But I love that. I love that you brought that umbrella to the conference, and you said the mood was good, the temperature was good, things are all moving seemingly in the right direction, even on your side of the world right now.
Yes. However, there is a massive disconnect between what MPs are saying and what is actually achievable. Now, I know that sounds really obvious, but I'll give you an example. They talk about wanting us in the UK to be an AI superpower when we have the highest electricity costs in the world and no way near being energy secure. So I actually asked somebody, I was sitting on the train coming back from Liverpool, and I happened to sit opposite someone who's actually pushing for digital IDs at the Tony Blair Institute. And obviously I was trying to stay civil. And I asked him about this disconnect between energy prices and the need to be an AI, or the want to be an AI superpower. And he just said it's aspirational. But that wasn't how it came across when they're talking to people. They're talking to people as if it's actually achievable. And it just made me realize how disingenuous these government bodies and connected organizations are when it comes to pushing agendas, because they talk the talk, but they absolutely have no way of walking the walk.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think lip service is something we've kind of come to expect in the political sphere, unfortunately, is, politicians are always looking to ride whatever favorable wave seems to be coming their way so they can garner more votes for their next election cycle. So it's unfortunately just a bad reality of the situation, but hopefully there's some good that comes out of it. Here in the colonies, it seems like we've been getting a lot of lip service, but some favorable regulations being put in play. Obviously, we still haven't seen the strategic Bitcoin reserve actually come to fruition the way we've been hoping. But, we've got Cynthia Lummis out there pounding the drum on it pretty hard. So I think it's one of those things we will see eventually, maybe a little before the UK does. But once we get the green light, I'm sure you over there and the team will be following shortly thereafter. We got a lot to talk about today, Suze. Go ahead, please.
We do, but saying that we would follow, actually, this was a question that was put to our Economic Secretary of the Treasury when she went to a Financial Times Digital Asset Summit. She said, as the US is going ahead with the strategic reserve, will the UK look to do something similar? And she just shrugged and said, it's not for us.
Not for us? That seems a little obtuse, just to put it as simply as that. Why do you think that is? What's so different about the regulatory landscape over in the UK as opposed to here, where you're going to get answers like that?
They don't understand it, and I think they still largely see it as irrelevant. Plus, our financial conduct authority do not understand the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. At least with your Bitcoin strategic reserve, you've separated out your kind of shitcoin stockpile with your Bitcoin reserve. They haven't got a clue about the difference over here, and I don't know how they can drive innovation and growth where they can't even get that right.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand it. That's it's not very forward thinking to just being like, we're not going to be considering this at all, at least anytime soon. Is that generally how, politics work in the UK these days? Or what's the rationale behind that? I can't understand it. I'm so out of the loop when it comes to the, United Kingdom's political sphere.
Well, I just think they're largely uninformed. So when you talk to them, they just come up with sound bites and stories. They don't really have any deep knowledge in any of the subjects that they're talking about. And one other thing that I found that was quite shocking is how in bed the government are with large corporations. So I went to a couple of these in conversation talks, and Visa was sponsoring it. And the lady who was actually hosting the talk with our now Economic Secretary of the Treasury, Lucy Rigby, was late to the fireside chat because she was held up in a digital ID protest. And when she sat down, she was very apologetic. I'm so sorry, I got caught in this. And she said it with utter disgust, a digital ID protest. And then went on to talk about how the trick is that you want to be able to link payment ID or payments with ID. And I just thought, good grief, Visa have said out loud that not only are they pro digital IDs, but they actually want to link payments with IDs. If that doesn't terrify people, then I don't know what does.
Yeah, I do not want everyone tracking what I'm spending my money on all the time. It's not for everyone. So what you mentioned education though, in terms of, it seems to be there's a lack of people, at least education or people being educated about this space in the UK. What do you think is the answer to that? Do we need to be offering a side of bangers and mash with every Bitcoin YouTube video? Or like, how do we get the UK to, buy into what we're selling here? Because it seems pretty obvious.
It does seem obvious, and that's a large part of the frustration. I don't know. It's just hopefully the mainstream media will start to flip their narrative, because most people form their opinions based off articles that they've read at the BBC about 10 years ago and then just completely write off Bitcoin. So I think until the mainstream media flip their narrative and actually start reporting on it accurately, we're going to have a real uphill battle. But I think that other countries moving forward with the UK they're just going to have to catch up at some point and concede.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't want to have to instigate some kind of Boston BTC party to get it across to you Brits out there that we need to get on the Bitcoin ecosystem here. But I know you're helping lead that charge there, so we're glad for people like you that are slowly but surely evangelizing more and more people in the UK into this space, because that's what we need. We need a couple strong and well-educated influencers or, key leaders of thought in these spheres to help slowly get everybody informed as to what is actually going on in the world right now. Because if you're paying attention like you and I are, this train is going up and to the right forever. And we're certainly excited to talk more about that with you on the show today, Sue. So we got a couple stories I want to chat with you about. I want to go over, we talked about these earlier. I'm going to do a quick recap, and then you and I are going to jam about them. Sound good?
It sounds great.
All right, so something we talked about earlier, Suze, was Bitcoin, as I'm sure you're aware, hopped about 5% in the last 24 hours, reaching as high as around 119K, and the total crypto market cap stretched to over 4 trillion, which isn't too bad for a passing fad. October, as we know, has only been read twice since 2013 in a green September, often turbocharges Q4, which we just entered into a few days ago. And Wall Street's also bracing for decisions on 16 spot altcoin ETFs, while cycle watchers have circled late 2025 as the likely peak window for this year's cycle. And the net effect of all of this is momentum plus headlines equals shorts learning cardio. And I want to bring Suze back for this. Suze, in October, as we've seen, strength seems to be a real thing for Bitcoin. Is that just a fun meme that people repeat every year, or is there any truth that we should actually be looking at these charts and expecting a good October, because history does tend to rhyme?
It does, and it's obviously not a guarantee, but I think there's only been 3 red Octobers since 2009, and it does seem to be that this is where things pick up after the summer doldrums. So, I think October's going to be a thing.
Yeah, and we got some interesting potential catalysts on the way, including a bunch of altcoin ETFs getting approved. So it kind of begs the question, does that type of thing pull attention away from Bitcoin, or does it bring new people who end up buying into Bitcoin too? Because they go into those altcoin ETFs and then they're like, this is no good, and then they're more comfortable, so then they end up allocating to Bitcoin eventually? Are these altcoin spot ETFs a positive step for Bitcoin ultimately?
Well, I'm not going to be a fan of a shitcoin ETF. I mean, I'm not even a massive fan of ETFs generally. I mean, that's not freedom money for me or what Bitcoin is for. However, I believe in freedom of choice. If people want to buy ETFs, then of course that's their choice, and I'm not going to be a dictator about it. They're just not necessarily for me. I don't know. I just think that people will get wrecked, and I think it's really irresponsible if you're going to create an ETF on something that's just built on sand, because there's only a handful of projects that are actually legitimate, in my opinion, out of the millions of cryptos that exist, and most of them trend down when you pair them against Bitcoin. So to give them an ETF almost gives them legitimacy, and I think that could mislead people.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I guess the question I have is, though, do you think that offering these eventually lead more people into Bitcoin from the simple fact that they'll probably get into these ETFs for Dogecoin or whatever junk, get wrecked, but then see, oh, look, Bitcoin has been steadily performing this whole time. So do you think these ETFs could act as maybe an on-ramp to new Bitcoin users down the line as they eventually get burned by these altcoins?
It's possible, but then it's also possible that they put the crypto in the same bucket as Bitcoin, think that it's all shit, and then walk away completely and just go back to tech stocks. I don't know. I'm not really sure. You could argue it both ways, but generally crypto people do end up finding Bitcoin eventually. So yes, I guess so.
I'll admit, I got into Bitcoin initially because a friend told me about XRP back in 2016 or something, and I was digging around and I was like, wait a second, this Bitcoin thing sounds way better, and that's eventually how I kind of orange pilled myself. So it happens. I'm not saying it's all the time, but
I was a shitcoiner. That's how I started. No, I absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I was a massive shitcoiner. Please don't take that as the that you take out there.
No, I appreciate hearing that. We all come from that, I think. A lot of us do. And it's nice hearing people that are big Bitcoiners say, hey, I used to believe in this junk, but, I did the work, and now I realize that it is, in fact, garbage, and I'm here for the real thing, which is Bitcoin, which has brought you and I together, which is just so wonderful. And, an interesting narrative that I've seen happen, especially this year, Suze, is that there are people now more than ever seemingly talking about Bitcoin, and then there's everything else in crypto, right? How do you think we can go about pushing that narrative forward so that people understand that Bitcoin, while at first glance seems like it's crypto, is actually a very different thing than everything else that's out there? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, goodness. I mean, if ever I go and I speak somewhere, or I have an opportunity where I'm speaking to somebody directly, one of the first things that I do is explain the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. I mean, it's a very slow way of educating people, but I think it really is the only way. You've just got to keep banging that drum.
And from your seat at the table, Suze, just in the last 2 days, Uptober seems to be taking off better than probably any of us could have actually imagined. Who do you think, or what do you think is kind of doing the heavy lifting right now in terms of pushing Bitcoin's price and the narrative forward right now? Do you think is this history of Uptober, are people really buying into the fact that, hey, October is traditionally one of the best months for Bitcoin, and they're piling in. Is it the ETF headlines or the institutional players still really the ones that are moving things forward in this space? Or maybe is it rate cuts, or maybe a confluence of all of those things? So I guess to rephrase my question, from your seat, what's the biggest driver right now in terms of the positive momentum that we're seeing from Bitcoin?
I think seasonality plays a big part in this. And I think people just come out of the summer and then they start just thinking, right, okay, let's get back on it again. ETFs, I think, are definitely driving it. This whole treasury company boom is a massive factor. And I just think that the supply is getting less, and it's like you say, it's only heading in one direction. I think this price increase is inevitable. I do worry that Bitcoin treasury companies are going to lead to the next crash. I think they're kind of a bit Ponzi style-ish, and I'm really concerned that as they hoover it up and the price goes up, when it all goes wrong, it's just going to come crashing back down again.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be my next question. When we had you on the first time, I don't think this Bitcoin treasury narrative was quite at the same level that we're seeing right now. So what is it about this play that gives you a little bit of pause? Does it just seem like everybody is jumping in because they saw Saylor do it and expect similar gains, even though, you know, strategy is in such a different place than pretty much every corporate treasury company out there? How do you see this playing out? Do you think then we're going to see this big, I mean, we're kind of seeing now, there's like 190, I think, corporate treasury companies right now. Are we just going to see eventually a bear market of some kind and some of them just not be able to withstand that? And then you'll kind of see this feedback loop of a company bought in at, 115, maybe Bitcoin's back down to 90, and all of a sudden their heads are all underwater, and then they have to sell, and then we see a bunch of sells as other companies experience a similar fate? Because that kind of seems like that would be something that could play out. What are your thoughts for that going forward? Because this is uncharted territory.
It really is. I also think that we shouldn't be just viewing all treasury companies as if they're equal. So if you have spare cash on your balance sheet and you want to use that cash to buy Bitcoin, that is a very prudent move. It's the best performing asset of the decade. Of course you should do that. If you're going to dilute your shareholders and have this capital raising cycle where you have to constantly go out, raise capital, dilute your shareholders just so you can keep this flywheel going, then that just feels a little bit Ponzi adjacent, and it feels like something that could ultimately crash. And also, if you're using leverage, that's also not great. So I think it depends on how you're buying the Bitcoin, why you're buying the Bitcoin, how aggressively you are. And another thing that really bothers me is, does it solve a problem? Is your company actually doing anything with Bitcoin? What's the point in taking a failing company like Metaplanet, whacking a whole load of Bitcoin through it, pumping up the price when the underlying business is still shit?
Yeah, that is very much a concern, that these companies that had underlying, it seems to be the play, right? You have a business that's struggling and they're like, hey, we're just gonna buy a bunch of Bitcoin and pivot. And you're like, what? It reminds me of, I don't know if you're a South Park fan at all, but there's an early episode of South Park. You do, so you might remember this one. I think it's from like the first season, where they were the underpants gnomes. And they had a three-tiered system. It was steal underpants, something happens, profit. And we don't really know what that middle part is right now. And the underpants gnomes seem to be the corporate treasury plays. And I think we're going to decide the winners and the losers of that play, of this, play, based on the stewards at those individual companies. Because like you mentioned, not everybody's in the same position as strategy where they got a cost basis in the 70s. So it's really like, who are the real talents in the space that are going to create new ways to utilize that Bitcoin, kind of to your point, rather than just holding it on their books and being like, that's it, that's the move, right? Because that doesn't do anything. Yeah. So what are you kind of like, are there any companies that are doing it outside of strategy that you're looking at and thinking they actually might be one of the winners here? Is there anybody that kind of piques your interest in that regard?
There is actually. There's a company that just launched recently called BHODL, and what they want to do is they want to use their Bitcoin to develop Lightning infrastructure. So they want to scale payments. The point is that they don't think that Bitcoin can work for what it's intended to if it's just a store of value. And so to make it realize its full potential, then we have to make it a global payment system. And Lightning is the best way of doing that right now. So to actually accumulate Bitcoin as part of your treasury and then use it for liquidity to then build out the Lightning network, not only are you accumulating Bitcoin, which is obviously the best performing asset of the decade, but it's solving a problem. And it's not just taking a failing company, whacking Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and then just going, and then being a kind of going around the world asking people for money so you can just keep going with that cycle, which is the thing that I find crazy, because you get a lot of these people that are the CEOs and you see them absolutely everywhere talking at every single event globally. And I think, well, why are you not running your business? How are you not dealing with building and strategy? All you're doing is just convincing people that your company is great when you're not actually doing anything to grow your business. And it confuses me. I'd put the CEO of Tether in that category.
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely need to see them doing something with all of this Bitcoin. Otherwise, like I said, it kind of feels a little Ponzi-ish. But we'll see how this plays out. The next 6 months specifically will be very interesting. But if Bitcoin keeps, well, I guess it kind of begs the question too. And I would love to get your thoughts on this, Suze. There's a lot of talk right now that the 3.5, 4 year Bitcoin cycles as we know them are over. And people are saying that now it's likely just going to be a slow grind up and to the right. I know like Matt Hogan over at Bitwise has been a big proponent of this. Is that how you see Bitcoin playing out as we usher in this new era of Bitcoin's journey, where cycles aren't going to be, or like the cycles aren't going to be driven by the cycles themselves as we've seen in the past, but instead by more like macro conditions and institutions buying in? Like, are we entering a whole new realm of Bitcoin's journey right now?
I really did think that this time was different. For a while, I was convinced that the cycles would be broken and everything else would crash, but Bitcoin would keep going up. Now, I think with the Bitcoin treasury companies, I'm not so sure. I think that could possibly be the catalyst for quite a serious bear market, because as they're accumulating all this Bitcoin and we're heading towards a potential supply crunch, which is why I thought this time might be different. If it goes and fall like dominoes, then there could just be a massive flood of Bitcoin coming back into the market.
Yeah, and it kind of seems like every so-called cycle has its one big challenge that it has to overcome.
Yeah.
There's like Terra Luna. I think of FTX in the past, and then Bitcoin, it's all over again. And I kind of wonder if this treasury play that we're seeing, when it eventually, or what I think will eventually come to a head, if this will kind of be that next challenge that Bitcoin has to overcome, where everybody says it's over again, because it would be kind of a circular feedback loop of, oh no, we're underwater, we have to sell Bitcoin, and then another company is. But
Exactly.
We'll see. I don't know how this is going to play out. And as long as it keeps going up, I guess everybody is fine, right?
Yeah, well, or are they? I don't know, because if nothing's changing to the underlying business model, and it's a lot of these are based on leverage and CEOs going out trying to convince people, because that's what they do. What these CEOs are doing is just going out and speaking and trying to convince people that their company is great. But it's just words.
Yeah. That's a lot of lip service, and that sounds very political, as we talked about before, and nothing really comes from lip service usually. We need to see actions, but we'll see how it goes. All right, we got another story I want to talk about with you, Susan. I know you have opinions on this one, so I'm excited to chat with you about it, and I'll bring you back in just a second, because we're talking about Tether. They just bought 8,888 more Bitcoin. It's around $1 billion worth at 113K per coin, and they instantly boosted their stack almost overnight by 11%. They've been doing billion-sized Bitcoin buys for a couple years now, often when volatility spikes. It's more playbook than stunt. And their last attestation showed $9 billion in Bitcoin holdings, and now BTC sits neck and neck with gold on Tether's balance sheet. Or in other words, a giant player soaked up supply and tightened the float right under price. So we're bringing Suze back. Suze, I know you just love Tether. And when they buy $1 billion of BTC, is that healthy support for the market, or is that too much power in one player's hands? What are your thoughts on that?
I think talking about CEOs that just go around convincing people that they're great, I would definitely put Paolo in that category. Because he's co-opted all of the Bitcoin conferences as well. Like, he just goes and talks at Bitcoin conferences. And it's a stable coin. It's a stable coin that's a CBDC via the back door. And yet somehow he speaks at all these conferences and Bitcoiners listen to him as if he's credible. It shocks me. So I just don't understand it. I really don't understand it.
Are you anti-stablecoin then, or are you anti-Tether and Paulo Ardoino specifically?
I am possibly. I think stablecoins have a place. The problem that I have with stablecoins is that, especially with Tether, the way that it's backed is 85% US treasuries. So the US export their inflation, then create a situation where people need to use stable coins as a lifeline. Then they buy the stable coins. It goes back to feeding the US hegemony, which then makes the problem worse for those people using stable coins. And the whole time you're not really allowed to say, I don't like stable coins, because people use them as a lifeline. But the fact is that it's just a really uncomfortable loop for me.
But would you say that you think stablecoins help a lot of people kind of get into the Bitcoin space? Because I know, like South America, for instance, you said they're a lifeline. You have these countries with terrible, terrible inflation that's just killing everyone's ability to store value. So, I mean, do you think stablecoins, though, could be a net positive, at least in the fact that they are kind of on-ramps for a lot of people to get into the Bitcoin space?
Yes, and I think that everything leads to Bitcoin. I think stable coins will ultimately be good for Bitcoin. I mean, I have lots of different opinions on them. They don't all marry up. You know, I have kind of two thoughts in my head at the same time, and they can be opposing. I don't know, but the way that it backs US debt, the way that they are buying up Bitcoin businesses, they're buying people, basically. They're buying people, they're buying businesses, and they're making out like they're this great group of Bitcoiners because they're buying all this Bitcoin. But really, I think underneath it all, it's all very sinister.
Yeah, I think there could be some truth there. I can't say that I've been a fly at any of those walls, but you know, I try to take these things with a grain of salt. All I know right now is I feel like it's a net positive for Bitcoin, but again, we are in very uncharted territory in so many different arenas right now. Only time will tell, so we'll see. And I can already tell you're done talking to Tether, and so am I. So we're gonna move on to this next story here. I'll spare you any more Tether questions. All right, so we're talking about JPMorgan. They had a recent take where they compared Bitcoin to gold, and that Bitcoin, by comparison, looks pretty cheap. I mean, it's got a fixed 21 million supply, there's rising adoption globally, and a huge value gap there. Gold's total market cap is north of 20 trillion. Bitcoin is currently just over 2 trillion. And that canyon doesn't close without price moving up. They still flag volatility and regulation going forward, but the headline is that TradFi isn't ignoring Bitcoin anymore, it's modeling it. And when a $4 trillion bank says undervalued, CIOs everywhere here, you're allowed to do the work. So we're bringing Suze back. Suze, when a huge bank comes out and says Bitcoin looks cheap, do big investors buy now? Or does it take months for them to still show up because they got to do the research and all of that stuff? Or is it big enough where they're just like, okay, I'm in now because this bank said so? Do you think it moves the needle?
I think it can do. I mean, people needed BlackRock to tell them that Bitcoin was okay, didn't they? I mean, that confused me. But Bitcoin was always awesome. We did not need BlackRock to tell us that that was the case. So I think our legacy finance admitting that Bitcoin, you know, like we've been saying for years, is a good buy, then yeah, it all helps. I mean, you know, it's portable, divisible, verifiable. It's so much better than gold, and people are going to start to wake up to that. So yeah, it is undervalued versus gold, like 100%. We've been saying that for a long time.
And that brings up, you know, people are always calling Bitcoin digital gold. And we talked earlier about the ability to spend Bitcoin. Like nobody's really spending gold anymore, but we're calling it digital gold, AKA like a store of value. In your thought, do you kind of align with Jack Dorsey, for instance, that thinks that Bitcoin will have to be used as a payment system or a medium of exchange rather than just a store of value in order for it to kind of reach the promise that so many of us have for it? Or can it just be a store of value and still accomplish all of these things that we think Bitcoin, eventually can do?
It has to be a medium of exchange. For Bitcoin to succeed, in my opinion, it has to be a freedom money. And we've seen a lot of the things that have been going on across the world, especially over here in the UK. It's all starting to feel very authoritarian. And so I really do think that Bitcoin needs to be the grassroots people movement that separates money and state and just make sure that our money can't be seized, controlled, or censored. That's not going to happen in an ETF.
Yeah. And from your seat over in the UK, what do you feel like is still holding big institutions back from Bitcoin? Is it the storage and the safety element, taxes, and kind of some of the unclear accounting rules, or maybe the career risk of just being early? Like, why is the sentiment seemingly so different on your side of things, do you think, as opposed to here in America where everything is getting pushed forward, but maybe it's because we have a president that has his pockets lined with Bitcoin? I don't know. What do you think the difference is?
You got a president that's going through a serious shitcoining phase, which is actually weirdly helpful. I think the biggest issue that we have over in the UK is our Financial Conduct Authority, or FCA, do not understand the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. They have put everything under restricted mass market investment, which means that everything has the same risk profile. And as a result, meme coins have the same risk profile as Bitcoin, which is insane. When you think that something that has a 60% market cap over the whole crypto is a decentralized protocol versus a meme coin that you can make in 30 seconds and they've both got the same risk profile. Just doesn't make sense.
No, it really doesn't. And, time and again, we've seen plenty of people be detractors of it. They all eventually come around. It's just like, how quickly are they willing to actually do that research? And until then, I wonder, and I would love to get your thoughts. Do you think Bitcoin is ever in the kind of near future going to catch up to gold's value? Or are we going to be talking a few years or maybe a few decades before Bitcoin is truly considered on par with gold on a global scale?
It's really difficult to say. I think sometimes it can just happen really quickly. I do think we could potentially be looking at decades, but I think it definitely will happen. With regards to the timescale, I'm just not sure. I mean, was it China that's been buying a hell of a lot of gold recently? They've been really, really hoarding it, but nobody else seems to be buying it in the same way. So I'm not sure if it's going to be one of those things that happens very, very quickly where everybody realizes and all assets start bleeding into Bitcoin. We know that everything is eventually going to bleed into Bitcoin. Real estate and all kind of investments, people are going to start to realize that it's much better to not have traditional assets and that Bitcoin is the answer. Timescale, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've heard that phrase. I know Samson Mao beats it like a war cry, gradually but suddenly. And you don't really see that in many things, but this does kind of feel like an arena where that very well could be the case. If the US were to come out tomorrow and say we are actively buying Bitcoin, you gotta figure that's gonna turn heads across the globe, and all of a sudden we might see that government arms race for Bitcoin, kind of similarly as we're seeing this institutional arms race now. But we don't even have really the Mag 7 companies involved yet, aside from Tesla, and they made their purchase years ago. So yeah, it's hard to say, but I think when it happens, it's going to happen so fast that we're not even going to know what's going on. And if you're not already in at that point, you will officially be late. But right now we're still early because it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see. We got another story I want to talk about, Susan. This is a fun one, so hang tight here. I'm going to bring you back in a second. Because we're talking about Jim Cramer. He posted that the U.S. debt clock is at $37.6 trillion, and he told followers to buy crypto literally weeks after asking the rally to please cool off. Crypto Twitter did the inverse Cramer bit, and Michael Saylor chimed in to say, focus on Bitcoin. The message was debt bad, scarce money good. Isn't that so? The messenger is, kind of polarizing. Jim Cramer, we have our feelings about him, but the net effect is noise today, but it keeps Bitcoin in the mainstream conversation for tomorrow. So I guess thanks, Jim, for that. We're bringing Suze back. Suze, Jim Cramer came out with another one of his hot takes about crypto. He told people to buy crypto. Begs the question, when you have guys like Jim Cramer coming out giving these hot takes, whether it's about Bitcoin, crypto, or anything else, does this cause more whiplash in the industry than wisdom? Or is it, you think, a good thing because at least it's getting these conversations started?
Are you talking about the Cramer inverse indicator?
Just pretty much Jim Cramer mentioning anything regarding Bitcoin or crypto, because there is the inverse Cramer thing, but he's also this pundit. I don't know. Do you think he's good for Bitcoin, just talking about it?
He's good if you do the opposite. That's the point. If you do the opposite,
that's true.
It's absolutely fine. The good thing is he said crypto, not Bitcoin. So that means crypto's dead, essentially, because he says. But Bitcoin's fine.
I would like to think, I would like to think that he was that specific, where he actually thinks Bitcoin and crypto are different things. I don't know if Jim Cramer is quite at that train of thought yet, but yeah, you're right. So I'm surprised we haven't seen all of the markets aside from Bitcoin tanking this morning, but I guess that's a good thing. Do you think him pointing at the national debt clock is a good way to explain why Bitcoin matters? Because I got to give him credit, saying that $37.6 trillion debt number certainly makes people think maybe there's a better way. So, I don't know. Do you think maybe that is something we should be focusing on more, like the big debt numbers the United States have? And I know other countries have their own debts too.
Yes, I mean, isn't the US on schedule to reach 40 trillion by Christmas? And doesn't the M2 money supply and Bitcoin track within about 8 weeks of each other? So as more money comes into the system, Bitcoin goes up. So yeah, he is actually right for once.
Yeah. I hate to say it. I don't want to say he's right, because the second he's right about something, it's going to turn the opposite direction.
Yeah, broken clock right twice a day, yeah.
Broken clock is right twice a day. You're right, exactly. That is Jim Cramer in a nutshell. Well, Suze, we're getting a little long on our time here, but before we get going today, we started a new game since we had you on last time. It's all for fun and giggles. Let's go to camera 3 here really quick, guys. I don't know if you have it. Do you guys have your own version of they're getting the chart. Do you have your own version of the show, The Price is Right, in the UK? Is that anything that exists? Are you familiar with that show at all here in the US?
I think we did in the 80s, yeah.
You did.
I don't know if it's a recent thing. Maybe it is. I just don't watch TV anymore like that, but yeah.
That's fair. There's not a lot of good stuff on. But yeah, it's a price prediction game. And as we know, in the Bitcoin space, everybody loves to make price predictions. So what we've been doing is, with every one of our guests, we've been getting their price prediction for Bitcoin on December 31st of this year. The clock strikes midnight. Where is Bitcoin at? And our winner is getting a Roxom Patagonia vest that either Roxom is paying for, and if they don't, I will be paying for it, but happy to give it to our lucky winner. And we're bringing up our chart here as we actually have a list of all of our guest predictions, but we synthesized it down to the top 10. Are we getting that list up, guys? They're working on it. Okay, beautiful. Thanks, guys. All right, here's our list. Beautiful. So you can see this is just some of them right now. Knut Svanholm, I know, is the high bidder. I think he bid at about 443 by the end of this year, God willing. And you can see I'm more on the conservative end. I think I'm at 142. So where do you feel you fit, or your prediction falls on this chart, Suze? And what would be your reasoning behind whatever prediction you got? And again, this isn't financial advice. This is just for fun.
Okay, so I definitely wouldn't go that high. I think December we could. I think October and November are going to be up, and then I think we may start coming down in December. So I would probably sit around $152,000.
Okay, 152. Let's put Suze on the board. I love it. And before we let you go today, Suze, really quick, what's going on in your world? Are there any things that you're working on right now that you're super excited about that we should be paying attention to out there? Because I know you're on the bleeding edge of things, so we would love to hear what you think is worth paying attention to at this moment in time.
Well, I'm writing an article at the moment about the Labour Party conference and digital IDs and the juxtaposition between the fight between control and freedom, and how the UK is not taking Bitcoin seriously, but they are pushing this dystopian technology. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment. Just that whole digital ID narrative. Yeah.
Where is that going to be released once it's available so I can have our viewers go check it out?
So that hopefully it will be out tomorrow morning, and it will be on Forbes.
Oh. On Forbes. Okay, beautiful. Will you be, I assume, posting that on your great Twitter page as well, so our audience can go get a link to it there too?
Yep, absolutely. Yes.
And then what is your Twitter handle so that all of our great audience that doesn't already follow you can get on the horse and do the right thing?
It is at Decentrasuze.
Well, Decentrasuze, you are the best. It is always a pleasure having you on the show, and we appreciate your insight, expertise, and time this morning. And we hope you have a great rest of your week, Suze. And I know you're living in the future, so I hope the rest of your Thursday went well, and I can be expecting the same here in the good old US of A.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being on your show. Thanks, Hank.
Oh, pleasure's all mine, Suze. We'll see you next time, and thanks for stopping in. In the meantime, we're taking a break here at the Blockchain Report. We'll be right back to wrap up today's show after this.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
You wish you could grab cash without selling your Bitcoin? Yeah, same. That's why Ledn exists. They're the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Over $9 billion issued since 2018, with a perfect record protecting client assets. Now, what makes a Ledn loan different, you ask? Well, with custodied loans, your collateral stays put. They don't go degen and lend it out for yield. There's no credit checks, funds in under 6 hours, no monthly payments. You can repay anytime with zero penalties. And for transparency, grown-ups actually want proof of reserves reports every 6 months, verified by a top accounting firm. The bottom line here, gang, Ledn lets Bitcoin holders unlock liquidity without selling. Make sure to check it out over at ledn.io/RoxomTV. That's LEDN.io/RoxomTV. Go check it out. All right, it's that time of the day where we wrap things up with a little bullish, bearish, or BS. This is the part of the show where we recap today's top stories and then let you know how things are looking for Bitcoin. Good, bad, or is it just a whole bunch of you know what? Well, let's talk about it, shall we? First up, Bitcoin kicked off Uptober around 118, 119K after a 5K daily jump, and the SEC is widely expected to greenlight multiple spot altcoin ETFs, with October historically being very strong for Bitcoin. I am bullish on this. Why? Because seasonality plus ETF headline flow equals near-term demand and potential squeeze into new highs. Expanding ETF rails broadens future inflows, supporting higher long-run valuations. So tailwinds now, bigger pipes later. I'm bullish. Next up, Tether added 8,888 Bitcoin. That's about $1 billion worth to its reserves, lifting its Bitcoin stack by 11% and reinforcing a 2-year pattern of buying size into volatility. I'm calling bullish on this one too. I mean, this is immediate spot demand and fewer coins on the market today. Repeat purchases from a mega buyer signal persistent structural bid for future price appreciation. So bigger buyers equals tighter floats, which equals better prices for Bitcoin. I'm bullish. So right now, we got 2 bullish, 0 bearish, 0 BS. Let's see if we can go for the rare clean sweep. Last up, we got JPMorgan. says that Bitcoin trades below fair value relative to gold, citing its fixed supply and rising institutional adoption as reasons the gap can close over time. I mean, guys, you gotta be bullish on this too, right? A $4 trillion bank blessing digital gold's thesis boosts CIO confidence now and nudges allocation models for sustained flows later. Both supportive of higher Bitcoin prices, baby. So today's final score, we have 3 bullish, 0 bearish, and 0 BS, which means today is a clean sweep for the bulls, and you get the money gun, baby. That's right. Today's tape is stacked with tailwinds, not hopium, as Uptober momentum puts Bitcoin within striking distance of new all-time highs. Tether's fresh $1 billion buy is literal spot demand vacuuming up supply, and JPMorgan calling Bitcoin undervalued versus gold hands institutions a permission slip to allocate. And near certain altcoin ETF approvals fueling more on-ramps, and you've got intermediate bid now with bigger pipes coming later. Net, higher odds of upside pressure today and a cleaner runway for future flows. Love it. Very bullish today, gang. And as always, I want to thank each and every one of you, you and you and you and you, for tuning into the Blockchain Report each and every weekday. As always, we're at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Mondays, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. the rest of the week. And guys, if you haven't already, do me a favor, and yourself too. I want you to go to RoxomTV on Twitter and make sure you smash that like, follow, and subscribe button. And while you're at it, maybe just do the same for me too over at Hank at RoxomTV. We are both on all platforms that really matter out there, even Blue Sky. People use it, so make sure to follow us there if you haven't already. Until then, please stay safe, stay informed, and as always, make sure that you are hodling on. See you tomorrow, gang.